Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, welcome everyone to the special EJAG meeting. My name is Evangelina Barrera. Thank you for participating in our remote meeting for the Environmental Justice Advisory Group special meeting. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation. We ask that everyone be patient as we navigate this together. We have two formats for participation, the Zoom web application as well as a teleconference. Before we begin, I want to review some guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. These are very important, so we ask that you pay close attention. Please silence your other communication devices, such as your cell or desk phone. This will ensure that we are not hearing any feedback or causing interruptions during the meeting. During the meeting, all participants on Zoom, except for board members and South Coast AQMD staff, will be placed on mute by the host. That means that you will not be able to mute or unmute your lines manually. After each agenda item, the chair will announce public comment. For those on Zoom, if you would like to ask questions or make public comment on the Zoom screen, please click on the raise hand button. This will signal to the host that you would like to ask a question or provide public comment, and you will be added to the list. If you are using Zoom on your smartphone, please tap the raise hand button on the button at the bottom of the screen. For those calling in using the phone line, you can dial *9 on your keypad to signal that you would like to comment. Your name will be called when it is your turn to comment, and the host will unmute your line automatically. Please note you can hang up or leave the Zoom meeting at any time. Please adhere to the speaker time limit. Please treat others with courtesy and civility and respect the public meeting process. Rules prohibiting the use of signs or posters remain in effect for video participation. Profanity, discriminatory comments, or obscene gesture is prohibited. Disorderly, unruly, or aggressive behavior that infringes upon the rights of others or disrupts the good working order of the meeting is also prohibited. Any violation of the above rules can result in your mic being muted, your video feed shut off, or you being dropped from the phone or Zoom meeting lines. Thank you. So I'll pass it over now to Senator Delgado.
Thank you so much for that statement. And I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is 12:02. And can we get a roll call, please?
Okay. Senator Delgado.
Present.
Supervisor Janice Rutherford. Board Member Veronica Padilla-Campos.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Elizabeth Alcantar.
Present.
Thank you. Retta Alexander. See Retta. Manuel Arredondo. No. Angelica Valderas. No, Angie. Dr. Lawrence Beeson.
Present.
Thank you. Susan Bilodeau.
Present.
Paul Cho. Carrie Doi. Dr. Afiz El Hassan. Mary Figueroa.
Here.
Thank you. Angela Garcia. Kareem Kongora.
Present.
Ana Gonzalez. Dr. Monique Hernandez.
Here.
Dr. Jill Johnson. Humberto Lugo. David McNeil.
Here, it's David.
Daniel Morales. Donald Smith. Rafael Yanis. And I see Angie has her hand up. I will count you as here, Angie.
Yes, thank you. I was just in the waiting room, waiting to be let.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, so we have 10 in attendance, which does not make a quorum.
Angie, could you call the people who didn't respond the first time? Because I think a lot of people joined as you were calling.
Sure, I'll do this. I see. Okay, Retta Alexander. I see the name. And apologies if it's Retta or Rita. I'm not quite sure if you could just clarify that.
It's Retta.
It's Retta. Okay, thank you. So I see.
I'm present.
Thank you. Manuel Arredondo. Okay, Paul Choi. Carrie Doy. Dr. Afif El Hassan. Angela Garcia.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm present. I don't know if you heard me. This is,
Okay, I got you. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Angela Garcia. Ana Gonzalez. Dr. Jill Johnston. Humberto Lugo. Daniel Morales. Donald Smith. And Rafael Yanes. Okay, so that puts us at 12, which is one shy of quorum.
Well, maybe we can start and then hopefully we'll get somebody to come in. Before,
We have Ana Gonzalez as a attendee, so I think she would make the quorum. I just seen her on the list.
Okay, thank you for that.
Chair.
great. Okay. Before we start, I just want to make sure everybody is aware this is a special meeting that we talked about at our last meeting because we wanted to tackle the odor issues at rendering facilities, but it wasn't properly noticed. Board members on the Zoom are not able to vote on this item, so Veronica and I will be abstaining from the actual vote because ideally this is going to be heard by the board eventually, but we wanted to make sure that this is a forum that was available to everybody in this committee. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to staff, I believe, right, Derek?
Yes, I think the item on the agenda is that Mayor Alcantara is going to give background, I guess, on the letter or read the letter that was sent to us. And then Terence Mann from South Coast is going to give an update as to where we are since we received the letter.
Perfect. All right. Well, then let's start with Mayor Alcantara. Do you want to present the issue to us?
Sure. So I think everyone had a link to the actual letter. So I'll probably not read the entire letter, but just to give some background, for those of us in Southeast Los Angeles that live at least, and sorry for my voice, I lost it over the week. So a little bit off here, but for those of us in Southeast Los Angeles that live south of Vernon, we've always experienced rendering plant issues. I'm 28 now, going to be 29, and my entire life, I just know that in the morning, if you wake up early enough, you're going to smell, rendering plant smells. It's just unfortunately something that we've become very accustomed to because it happens every single day, minimum Monday through Friday, some weekends included. People do not call if they even know where to call. If they know that there's a regulatory agency, they don't call because what is it? And we always hear it, said in Spanish, but like, no hace nada, ¿para qué? Why do we do it if it's not going to result in any actual responsibility? And so we usually smell it in the morning. Last few months, it's also been in the evening at about 10, 11 o'clock at night. And so now residents are also going to be asked to call at night. The issue here is that the entire process from when you first call AQMD to when you are reached out to by an enforcer to when an investigator comes out and speaks to you in person, it's about a 2.5 hour process. And so now we're asking residents to call once in the morning, once at night. That's twice a day. That's 5 hours a day times 5 days in the week. That's 25 hours minimum, sometimes on the weekends too, as I mentioned. That's a full, that's a part-time job for people, completely unpaid, that we're being asked, or that we're asking residents to undertake. So in speaking to neighboring cities and talking about what are possibilities, we started thinking about AQMD and what are two rules that can be changed. Obviously, Rule 415 is one, Rule 402 is another that we can really revisit and hopefully get some not only tighter scrutiny around accountability for these rendering plans, but also changing the processes, because these processes are just not fair to our residents. Apart from the time that is needed in order for there to be any action taken, there needs to be a minimum of 4 initial calls in order for an investigator to come out immediately. And then once people call, there needs to be 6 confirmations in person that the odor persists. So just off the bat, the math there is a little off, a little imbalanced, right? And then after that, they need to go out and confirm that the smell comes from this one industry, or this one business, I should say. Obviously, that makes sense. But just the process in general, if we know that this is happening, if residents have been calling every single day for a week, then we should imagine that on Monday it's going to be back. And so we should have investigators out there. We should be taking a more proactive approach. This shouldn't be so leaning heavily on our residents. And so that was the basis of the letter. The letter is attached in the email that we received. There's also a response from AQMD. And so I was hoping to have the environmental justice committee here vote to also sign on to either a similar letter or a letter that's proposed. That's it.
Thank you, Mayor. And so a coalition of a lot of community groups essentially put this letter forward to make sure that we were aware of how important this issue is. And I think Veronica and I don't want to speak for you, but we'd heard about this issue for some time. One of the things I think is important is to hear from staff, and we've got Terence Mann here who's going to describe this issue in detail, the rule, how it works, the history, and what staff is going to be doing next. And I think we have Derek who would like to speak.
Yeah, so I want to get Daphne's input on this, but I think that what is the ultimate goal, and Daphne will correct me if I'm wrong, that was not noticed about voting on a letter to change the rules or whatever it was. I think it was to discuss the letter that was written, and then for the advisory group to vote to also ask for the same thing of the board. But Daphne, I'll let Daphne, you want to chime in, Daphne? Because I'm just afraid that this was not properly noticed, if that's where this is going to go.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
So the agenda states members may develop and vote on a letter to the governing board regarding this matter. So
the matter,
can discuss.
Right, but the matter was about the letter, right? That was written, not about asking the board to change rules or legislation, right?
The specific content of the letter was left open-ended. It's talking about odor issues at rendering facilities.
Right. So that's my concern, is that now we're going in a different direction. And if Daphne says we can do it, then let's do it. But
I mean, if I could chime in, I think it was general enough that I think we're okay, but obviously maybe Daphne can do a double check while we're kind of talking, and then, because I know we still have Terence's presentation, so maybe she can check while we're hearing that.
I think it should be fine, because if the rule is associated with odor issues, but but yeah, we can hear Terrence first and then have a deeper conversation about next steps.
I do see Kareem's hand is up. Do you want to wait to ask your question until after we hear the presentation, Kareem, or would you like to
Yes,
speak?
I'll wait. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, perfect. All right, with that, we'll turn it over to Terrence.
Great. Thank you, Vice Chair. So again, my name is Terence Mann. I am the head of the Office of Compliance and Enforcement. So the inspectors report to me, and many of the operations that are being run relating to rendering come out of our office. So, first let me say, we acknowledge that this is a serious problem, that it's been going on for a long time. Even when we cannot take enforcement action out there in the field, no one is saying it's not happening. This is a real thing, and we want to support the community, and we believe we have been, and we want to continue to do that as much as we can. To that end, it's not just the inspectors. This is an agency-wide effort. And so from our rulemaking team to our engineers who are looking at permits and trying to make sure that they are stringent, to our outreach team, Derek's shop, who are reaching out to elected officials. We're also coordinating with schools, other government agencies such as the LA County Department of Public Health. We are really, this is a top to bottom effort and a top priority for our organization. There was reference earlier to the two rules at issue. I think when this conversation started, it was originally about Rule 415, and that is the rendering facilities, the odors from rendering facilities specific rule. But there really are two rules here. You can think of them two different enforcement systems. So there's public nuisance. That's our Rule 402 and also the California Health and Safety Code. That's where we get calls or online complaints. Our inspectors go out sometimes in the middle of the night, and we're basically chasing. We're trying to chase the odors, and then we want to trace them back to the facility. One of the important things about that rule is that it's not a matter of choice, and it's not simply, we can just sort of do a little tweak. The governing board can just make a quick little change, and it'll be different. The key is that it's based on California law, the California Health and Safety Code, and the operative language is the odors, any nuisance, but in this case, the odors have to impact any considerable number of persons or the public. So it's truly a public nuisance rule. It's not just between two neighbors or a close group. It's got to impact a broad number of people. And that's why we're talking about 6 complaints. And that's why we all have to put in so much work. And we're so thankful for the community members who collaborate with us on that. And that's been successful. If you remember the Hyperion water reclamation plant out by the coast, when that broke down, we issued 40 violations there, 40. I believe 39, maybe 40 of them for nuisance, for public nuisance. Dominguez Channel, that odor incident, we issued NOVs under this, notices of violation, NOVs under this rule. Same thing with Mutual Flavors at City Terrace, for those of you who have been following that. We met with members of the community and worked together to figure out, this is how you do a complaint. This is what we need to do. And we issued multiple nuisance violations there as well. The thing is, as we all know, especially those of you impacted by this, rendering is different. The facilities are different. The wind patterns in this part of town are different. It spreads out over vast parts of the county. And so you can be, let's say our inspector can be in Huntington Park meeting with a community member trying to verify odors. The winds shift and now we got to go to Monterey Park. And so recognizing those challenges to verifying these complaints, the governing board wisely, I would say, adopted Rule 415 specific to rendering just a few years ago. And so while Rule 402, while public nuisance means we have to be out in the field, Rule 415 focuses on the facility. And so we understand your frustration when an inspector maybe doesn't come to your home or to one of your constituents' homes in the middle of the night. But what we're doing now is different. Because of Rule 415, we send that person straight to the rendering facility. So we're going to the place and trying to take enforcement action there. And we recently did that. Last month, we took action under Rule 415 for one facility, Baker Commodities, that didn't process or enclose all that raw material within 4 hours. So that's one of the requirements. So Rule 415 has what it refers to as best management practices, or BMPs. And there's like You got to cover the trucks. You have to clean up. You have to make sure the drains are fixed. You have to make sure you pave all the concrete so stuff can't get in there. There are also holding limits. You have to move this stuff through. And you know, on a hot day where the winds are moving, you understand the importance of getting those materials out of there so it doesn't create odors that impact everyone. And so that's a big part of Rule 415. The second part, probably the biggest part when you really think about it, is enclosures. So the rule is requiring facilities to build enclosures around the rendering operations. They say as enclosures are closed systems, but you get the idea, right? There's something physical that's not letting the odors get out. That is the best possible thing you can do to prevent odors from these facilities. So, and I'll talk a little bit about the deadlines, but the main thing is those enclosures are currently scheduled to be done this year. And so let me, hold on, I have this written down. I want to make sure I give you accurate information here. So, okay, so we have Baker Commodities, Darling Ingredients, Legacy, Smithfield, Coast. Those are the 5 facilities in or around Vernon. I'm going kind of fast, and we can, that information is available on our website. The community investigations part of our website has a rendering page that lists this in detail. But the key I want to point out is, so Darling Ingredients that we just talked about, they finished early. So they were fully enclosed last year. Legacy, which is the former D&D facility that some of you may be familiar with, it had some serious issues, but they've been acquired. So Legacy took them over. They're currently before our hearing board. They have a September deadline. Smithfield, the former Farmer John's, they have a November deadline. Our understanding is those facilities, at the last time we spoke to them, are ahead of schedule. The last, there's also Coast, but it's a smaller one. It doesn't have the throughput for a lot of these things, for a lot of these rules. Yes.
Hi, it's Susan. I just want to pause a minute because I noticed that Senator Delgado leaned in, and I thought maybe you might have. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, did I miss it? Sorry.
I was just asking if you had that exhibit that you use at Stationary Source, because that shows the locations that they're all clustered together while you're talking. But if you don't, I can try to pull it up off of our website.
We can pull it up, Terrence. You want us to pull it up?
Yeah, I defer to the vice chair. I just wasn't sure about the rules in terms of if we have to have a package that goes out to everybody, if we could use it. But if you want to bring any of these slides up, I'm happy to talk about them.
I just thought it might help everybody understand the contents. I know everybody's from different parts of town, but I think it helps to understand how difficult it is to locate which one, because they could be right across the street.
Definitely. And so, yeah, if the team could help me with bring up those slides. And I'm sorry, I was asked to condense that presentation, Vice Chair, into no more than 5 minutes. So I may have been going a little too fast.
Can we let Victor share, because he's got the presentation up? Victor, Paul or Anthony, you want to let Victor share?
Maybe while Victor's pulling that up, are there board member Padilla Campos, do you have any questions?
No, not yet. A lot of what is being talked about is very familiar to the presentation we received, and
okay,
no questions though thus far. Thank you.
So Victor, could you go to slide 7? I mean, Vice Chair, is this a good slide for, does this show the point you're talking about? Would you like to see the later slide that has the names?
No, I think this definitely shows how close they are in proximity, and also shows the density around the community, to Mayor Alcantar's point about so many people being affected by it.
Absolutely. And I think it's probably fair to say that these rendering odors impact this whole map. And so pretty much all of the cities here and probably beyond. So, all the way out to the east here, and certainly, of course, down to the south. And so I guess, I don't know if this is a question for Daphne. Are we fine in just using any of these slides?
I haven't seen these slides in advance.
This is a presentation.
Yeah, we're going to give this presentation
at
Stationary Source.
Yeah, it's posted.
Okay, yes, I don't. Yes, it's fine.
Okay, great. So why don't we Yeah, go to the next slide, actually. Whoa. Okay. There you go. All right, so this is what I was going through this very quickly, and I'm sorry if I just sort of threw a bunch of dates at you, but you can see these are the 5 facilities, those 5 facilities that are clustered very close together. So when they're that close, it's hard to trace odors back to them. And that's why it's so important that we want to enclose all of these operations, close them up. And as they get closed, it's not automatic. A place can have a breakdown or an issue, but generally as they all get enclosed, we can see the ones to go to first that it might be at. And so looking at this list, I'm going to go to Darling. So Darling is done. They finished early last year. Legacy, Smithfield, they're set for this year, though our understanding is that they are early. Coast at the bottom is exempt because of the size of it, doesn't have a lot of throughput. But to the top now, Baker, this is the one we're watching closely. This is the facility to which we issued a violation last month. And they have upcoming deadlines. So they have 2 plants, basically like 2 cookers. The main one should be enclosed in March and the backup in April. And, we are watching it very closely, and we will take appropriate enforcement action, as warranted. We fully intend to do everything within our power to enforce these deadlines. And so, let me just add then, because I don't want to use up all my time. I guess I think I'm already over my time. I don't want to keep going, but I want to make one final point, which is, once we take enforcement action, the question that the public often has, rightfully so, is what happens next? And we refer to our legal department for negotiating a settlement. There can be, if a settlement isn't reached, there could potentially be a lawsuit filed in Superior Court. If there are ongoing violations, the matter can be taken before our hearing board. But the really big impediment that we have is the statutory penalties. And so for strict liability, sort of the automatic offense where you can get it, you don't have to prove they were negligent or prove they knew about it. The maximum is $10,000 per day per violation. And there are some limitations to that too, in terms of there are some defenses that a company can have. There are also certain factors that the California Health and Safety Code lists, where the facility comes and says, hey, I just spent $10,000 to put in this helpful equipment over here. So maybe now I don't have to pay anything. This is the structure that's set up. And that's why this isn't a matter of where you issue one violation and you can automatically go in and force them to comply forever. This is why oftentimes, and I understand the community gets frustrated with it, oftentimes we have to issue 1, 2, 3, 4 violations, and then we can bring in the big guns, so to speak. And so, obviously this group will make its own decisions. I don't want to be seen as swaying that, but I can tell you from my perspective, the concern isn't the 6 complaints. The concern is what happens after you get the violation. As someone who works in enforcement, this is my life. I want to be able to go in there. My team wants to be able to go in there and make changes and help the community. And when we have a cap like that says, $10,000, do you think a Fortune 500 company is worried about $10,000? That's really where my concern is. But I'll get off my soapbox. I don't want to get out of my lane. But that's it for my presentation. And otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Terence, can you talk to the group a little bit about the information that I heard at Stationary Source that it was new to me, and I've been trying to study this now for as long as I've been on the board, about you have to get the 6 complaints and verify the smells, but if a teacher can you talk a little bit about that? I think that's helpful.
That is a great point. I should have mentioned that, right? And so the 6 complaints, this is really like the rule of thumb, the general rule. But when it comes to schools, and there are certain other examples of places where there are vulnerable people, but it's really schools. Children can't, they're minors, they can't really speak for themselves necessarily. And so the rule allows a teacher, an administrator, a maintenance staff member to be able to be a proxy for all the students. And so if a teacher calls in and says, hey, we're smelling this, if our inspector goes to the front gate of the school and smells the odor, that's it. We don't have to go to each person. We don't have to stay there all day. We can immediately turn around. And I can tell you the way we're doing it now, we probably already have an inspector going to these facilities, but we can do it very quickly. And it's a very powerful tool. That's part of the reason why we are focusing so much on outreach to local schools. I think there's like Maywood Elementary is there, and there's some certain other schools right there. We're trying to start our day there and really have a presence and try to help the best we can for those schools.
Thank you for that. And I think that's important for everybody to hear, that there is another tool that while we're thinking about what happens next on the board level and these committees, I think it's important for people to know all the tools that are available. Derek, do you, or anybody, Susan, do you want to describe kind of what is happening now outside of this committee, or just so everybody's aware of where, this letter, where it is in the process?
Let Susan.
So I think it's like, I think it'd be good to have Terence kind of talk about some of like sort of the next steps in terms of kind of stepping up our enforcement actions and the work we're doing there. And at the end of our response, we did talk about probably the need to look at legislative changes. It's like mechanisms that in terms of the penalties and we didn't highlight it, but it's like, there could be discussions in regards to nuisance and things like that in regards to, where we would want to go. So I think in regards to the comment from Mayor Alcantar, it's like in terms of the need, it's like, maybe it is really kind of focusing on legislative changes for penalties and higher penalties, and to really try to have a stronger deterrent for repeat offenders, and for those, to be motivated to be compliant and to be good neighbors. So Terence, you want to talk a bit about sort of the additional efforts that your team is doing in regards to rendering? And over the past couple of weeks, the numbers have come down in terms of the odors, but I think it'd be good for Terence to highlight what his team has been doing.
Absolutely. And so we basically have a daily presence now in the community and at the rendering facilities. And so we've been calling it our rendering strike team, basically. And we have, in addition to the hard work that our inspectors are doing during the days, during business hours, we also have a volunteer team available to go out at any time. So pretty much 24/7. And so we've made sure to build those rosters, but we are conducting daily surveillance routes, again, starting with the schools. So focusing on where we know children are. We've also conducted additional inspections of all of the rendering facilities. And we are basically working with all of the other teams that we have here. So for example, our engineering staff is going out to the facilities, looking at their existing permits to evaluate, look for any issues. And also there are permits that are coming in for new equipment. And the engineers are digging into them. And of course, I think I mentioned earlier that the Legislative Public Affairs Division is also helping us conduct outreach. And so overall, what we're doing is we are really pushing on the enforcement side, the outreach side right now, and looking for opportunities to take enforcement action. And while that's happening, these facilities are trying to complete their enclosures, or should be, let's say, working to complete their enclosures at the facilities. By November of this year, the final facility should be enclosed. So that should be done. And it's really at that point, then I believe, I was going to say Susan, but that's no longer your team. Susan's old division, the Planning and Rules Division, they will come in and then evaluate the rule. And all of us will provide input to say, are there any gaps here? Are there any areas that we can strengthen to make this even more effective? And then, of course, in line with that, we're also all working together on evaluating, should we recommend legislative fixes?
Thank you.
If I could just make one thing clear, Chair Delgado, what Susan had mentioned about the numbers went down. Just to clarify, the number of complaints went down. That's not to say the odors aren't still out there, but the number of complaints have gone down.
Right.
Yeah. I think we do hear about that fatigue of like, well, they're not going to do anything about it. Board Member Padilla.
You, Terence, I just want to clarify. You mentioned everybody should be done and closing by November of this year. Is there any sign or any risk that one of these folks that haven't completed their renderings will sell the business and then that requirement will no longer hold? And I'm asking from experience because Recology in our community was going to build an enclosure for their site, and then they sold the business and the new owner basically hasn't had to build the enclosure. So I'm just curious if you see that as a possibility or if there's any risk of that.
That is a very interesting point. I mean, I would say we don't have any indications of it, but I'm not sure if we would necessarily know what a company is thinking, behind closed doors. I would note, however, that this is a scenario with which we are familiar, and so it happened with D&D, which was a subject of, for those of you out there, it's a lot of NOVs, a lot of enforcement action. We were basically fighting with that facility, and they sold it. And Legacy, the new owner, came in, and our legal department did a great job of working with them immediately, saying, hey, this is what you're stepping into. And the facility agreed to go before the hearing board. And so it's a stipulated order for abatement. And that's what set those September deadlines. That's part of the reason why that September looks a little strange compared to the others, because it's been established by the hearing board. So we have a process in place to address that. It wouldn't be a matter of new ownership and we don't know what to do. But I can't really speak to any particular facility. I've seen no indications of that, though.
Yeah, I think another point to make is that I'm not sure about the situation with Ecology, but it's not a facility that's on my sort of radar for a rule that we had that required a building enclosure. Whereas the building enclosure, it is a requirement under Rule 415. And so anyone that's going to be operating is going to have to adhere to that. And so just the emphasis, Rule 415, think of it as the preventative measures. That is the proactive approach to address these odors. It really is state-of-the-art requirements. And I, definitely heard from the senator that it's like, the wish that this had been done quicker. It was a heavy lift, for those that know, it's like this rule has been in the making for many years, if not decades. And to get our board, it was a really monumental point when the board adopted the rule. And it does have every bell and whistle in there. And so, we're very hopeful. It's like after the building enclosures are done, that we will see a significant decrease in odors. But this is sort of a tricky industry. So we'll have to kind of wait and see. But that is it. We did incorporate everything we could incorporate into that rule.
Do you have any other thoughts, board member, before I start to turn it over to our committee?
No, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm very curious to hear what the rest of the committee has to say. I know when hearing the presentation, I was encouraged by this new rule and things really changing and kind of, not putting the burden on the community and just really having things improve. So I'm very curious to hear what the committee thinks, and just thank you for the staff for the work that's been going on and everything you all are doing, and this volunteer strike team, that's pretty great. So yeah, just that's it for now. Thank you. And Recology, they're not rendering. They're waste haulers, and they're no longer in LA. They're up north. But that was just an example. But thank you.
I'm going to turn it back to Mayor Alcantar if she'd like to kind of start the discussion, because unfortunately, board member Padilla and I cannot participate much in the discussion, because hopefully we will be guiding the fulfilling your recommendations on the board level. And unfortunately, I have to stop my time on this meeting at 1. I have a work meeting, but a board member Padilla will take over at that point. She hasn't seen her text yet, apparently, but now she saw it. So Mayor Alcantar, can I turn it over to you to guide discussion? Is she?
Sure. Yeah, sorry. I transferred over to my phone. Thank you. And I also want to just add that AQMD staff has been incredibly helpful throughout the process. I don't want to say that the 2.5-hour process is because they're not pulling their weight or anything like that. Not at all. I know that there's a lot of work to be done, especially around, traveling all the way out to Southeast Los Angeles and whatnot. So very thankful for their help. The enforcers, the investigators have been great to work with and communicate with. So just wanted to add that. Let me pull up my participant screen to see if there are any raised hands from folks. Not sure. And Senator, I'm just because you mentioned you're not able to participate in this piece, you are asking me to also bring on for comments, right?
So I think that'll be the best way to handle it, or we can have staff do it as well if you'd like. We can let Derek guide at least call people.
Right.
But that way, if you want to ask for a motion and all that, you have the freedom to do that without us running into any Brown Act violations.
Yeah, no, that works. I just wanted to clarify. Okay, perfect. And I do have two hands raised. First one being Larry Beeson. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, when I look at the map, the 5 areas, the 5 rendering plants were fairly close to each other, but you said the odors covered that whole map. And I was wondering if you get any, and when I watch the news in the morning and they show the wind patterns can change on an hourly basis, if you will. So I was wondering if when you go to a plant, they say, well, it's not me, it's the other guy, because the wind changed. So how do you deal with the rapidly changing wind direction and trying to say this order came from you rather than them saying, no, it's not me, it's somebody else? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I was going to answer the first part of your question, say yes, every time. I would say, and this is, before I joined the agency, there was a time when all of these were uncovered and our inspectors were going back and forth and all of them were doing the sort of, I don't know if you could see it if you're on here, but they were pointing to each other and saying, it's not me. And that's why the enclosures are so important. Because, if you lock it in and you have a building or something around that plant, when they say it's not me, and you just give a quick sniff, you can identify it and then go. It's not to say that there aren't sometimes issues like breakdowns and things can happen to equipment that can still cause an odor, but that's why the Rule 415 and those extra requirements are so important. Basically, that is the challenge, like you said, and that's why this particular issue was not as suitable for public nuisance law. So like I said, we issued 40 violations to the Hyperion plant last year. And that was a community that was well suited for this, for nuisance. This is different. And that's why it's important to have rules that go to the facility and don't, like the mayor was saying, don't put the burden on the community members. The community members shouldn't have to be the only people doing it, because it's a community member and our inspector in the middle of the night, and we're driving all over. So that's why now we go to the facility, we say, there's a problem with that process right there. We're going to stand here and watch you while you fix it, or soon we're going to issue a violation. And so that can help with the process. And we're hopeful that that's part of the reason why it appears that things have been a little better over the last couple of weeks. Not to say it's not happening, but hopefully to a lesser degree.
Thank you both. Go ahead, Mary Figueroa.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm really sorry that I missed the last board meeting because this was something that is extremely important for us to be dealing with as EJAG. Let me indicate, first of all, that I was very impressed with the letter that was sent into South Coast in order for us to hear about the concerns from the community, and especially from all the elected leadership. What comes to mind is the conversation that we've been having in part of Terence Mann's presentation in the process that currently is in place in order for this kind of attention to actually happen on a rendering plant like is causing some of the concerns here. When we're talking about having complaints that have to come in, and it's a certain number of complaints based on the population, irregardless of what the situation of that community is, that poses a concern, because for me, what it basically reminds me of is the fact that here in the community where I'm at, I work a lot with the community and the police departments. And as anyone will know, most people do not want to make any phone calls to the police departments, and they do not want to be identified as somebody making a call to complain about anything, because they're afraid that it's going to get out and that they're going to be labeled a snitch, which is basically the wording in the community. Well, this kind of reminds me of the same thing, because what we have here is a situation where the community is concerned about something, but yet they don't really know where to go in order to make their voices heard. They don't even know whether there's anything there for them to actually have a place to call. And then when you want them to end up being a certain number, like 6 complaints that it's indicated here, again, my thought turns to the fact that we're already dealing with communities that are at a disadvantage, and then we're going to not consider those disadvantages in comparison to other communities that have all of the resources and all of the internet capabilities and all of the know-how about how to maneuver something. It continues the injustice that we see in these communities, and especially because unfortunately they end up being communities of color. They continue to suffer behind some of the issues, not knowing that there are resources available to them, not knowing that there's a person like Terence Mann that actually pays attention to what has come in and the fact that they have resources to deal with it. So I think that it has opened up, for me anyway, a bigger issue on this particular part, to say we've got some work to do in order to not continue the injustice to those particular communities that are so in need. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. David McNeil.
I just certainly agree with what Ms. Figueroa said. I think the burden that was put on the community relative to the odors coming from the plant, translating that into implementation through 415, there's a gap in terms of communication and understanding. And I think, once again, it's a heavy lift to report the information, that what you're hearing, what you're seeing, the threshold and the amount of time and the communication and the in-person knocking on the door, as denoted in the letter, makes it a very uncomfortable situation for people in these communities. I think trying to lessen that burden, that's the objective. And I don't know that's been delivered in a way that we've addressed that situation. I'm thinking going back and looking at how to address that situation, make it easier for people to report anonymously and report consistently, and feel like it's easy to do. And I don't know if you could do it on a phone or if there's an app. I don't know what modifications could be made. And I think hearing from Mr. Mann all that's been done, I know the call in saying do something, writing these letters saying do something, got this done, right? And it took a heavy lift to get all people involved. And that shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't take 15 legislators or elected officials signing a letter and a union to get this done. The fact that it's gotten done and things are getting better, that's great. But I also think reporting back to people what the results are. We're hearing it. I'm privileged to hear it. But I don't know if the individuals who've been calling get that kind of, hey, here's what happened. Step 1, 2, 3, here's where we dropped the ball. Here's what we're doing to respond. And I think getting back to people, you put a phone call in, you don't know what happens. You have to keep calling to find out. No one's coming back to you and saying, okay, here's what we've done. So I think that's an important step as well in the communication loop that would help people feel a little better about what they're getting for their money's worth in terms of government and regulation. And I also am sad because I hope this community comment, I have to leave at 1 o'clock too, and I don't want to break quorum. So I'll stop talking here.
Appreciated. Thank you for your comment. Kareem Gongora.
Yes, thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you everyone for your comments. This issue is very near and dear, and I'm just happy that we're taking action or some type of measure of changing the way we do business. The way I would compare this to is like to a court enforcement action in the line of work that I'm currently in. And so I understand how the blame game occurs at the facilities. And then when you're dealing with odors and the way the wind operates, especially out this way, I could see how those type of nuances could create a more complex process. I guess for me, and it also underscores some of Mayor Figueroa's concerns, is developing a way that we're more responsive. Because I think what ultimately is happening and why community is a little more upset is because they think the time in between is time that's harming community. And while that's the reality, I guess it's not understanding what the whole process is. So if there's a way, I guess, to streamline the reporting process, make it in a way that it's not seen as law enforcement, I think would be the most beneficial, just to kind of mitigate some of those concerns that come from certain parts of our communities. Because I know where I've grown up, people wouldn't necessarily want to call 911 to report someone just because of the stigma that it creates. And those are things that we have to break down as well in our communities. But I think if we create a streamlined process, we'd be able to address those head on. So I'm just optimistic about the conversation, the discussion, and just looking forward kind of to overall solution, because I know in particular in the Southeast LA area, there's been a lot of concerns with odor. And I think that's really important. That's quality of life concerns. So those are my comments.
Thank you. And then Dr. Afif El Hassan.
Yeah, thank you. A quick question. Has there been any analysis of the soil around those areas, or any type of chemical analysis which might show some residual toxic chemicals that are being left behind? Just because the smell goes away or it's on and off, it doesn't mean that it doesn't leave a permanent residue or a permanent impact. And the other question I have is there any public health data, either from nearby schools or in the community, of respiratory issues, cancer, and other diseases that can be important and compelling data and could possibly change the dialogue? It may no longer be just about scent. It may be a indirect form of toxic waste dumping, depending on what they find. And that changes the legalities and the conversation completely.
I'm not sure if there's someone on staff that has any direct information in regards to that.
I think we'll need to get back to you, but I just want to remind us that we're talking about the rendering odor. So it's the animal parts and the excess meat that might be cut off at grocery stores, and they're essentially boiling that to get for the tallow and to make other types of products. But we can look into that and get back to the group.
Once something has heat applied to it, it turns into something else completely. And some of those chemicals can be extremely dangerous, even if it started out fairly harmless as just animal fat.
Mm-hmm.
Our senses, and the reason we smell things is because they're probably not good for us. And that's why they bother us, and our body's trying to tell us something. So once again, the conversation changes because you're dealing with a product that has been chemically altered. And I'd be happy to take that discussion offline, but I'd be very curious about the public health data and the fact that there are other ramifications to an odor.
Thank you. And I am going to try to move us along. I know that there's several folks that need to jump off at one. Just really quickly to address those concerns, Dr. El Hassan, I think the other issue is that these communities, and I'm sure as others have mentioned in other communities, they tend to be environmental justice communities. So it's not just rendering plant issues. Here in this area, it was also Exide. It's also the 710. It's the 105. It's, so many other industries as well. And so I think it's also difficult to kind of pinpoint so many of the issues, considering we have so many. But okay, I do not see any additional hands at this point. With clarification from staff, I guess just a simple thumbs up or a yes, letting us know, are we able to move to have the EJAG sign on to the letter, or are we revisiting that conversation just general?
Before we go to the vote, we have to do public comment.
Oh, that's right.
Make sure we do
Sorry.
that. Okay.
Mayor, could I ask a quick question real quick? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
It just came up. I wanted to, so about enforcement, this is more of a staff question. When it comes to enforcement, what are the type of ramifications besides fines that we provide? Do we require these facilities to have a monitoring system, or some type of active system that would notify us in the future, or is compliance only seen at the location and then in a certain period of time, or how does that typically work?
I think the baseline is civil penalties. So it starts with the pocketbook. And then from there, during the settlement negotiation process, other things can be agreed to. And oftentimes improvements or additional controls will be added. Again, using penalties as leverage.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and open public comment. Let me pull up the attendee list. Any raised hands from the public?
I'm not seeing any raised hands.
I don't see any either. Okay, perfect. So at this point, we'll close public comment and entertain a motion from the EJAG.
I'll make the motion, Mayor, that we move forward with the letter. I don't think we need to do any further edits to the letter, but we'd be willing to help if that's necessary.
Great, thank you.
David McNeil seconds the motion.
First and a second. So I guess we go into roll call.
Okay. Senator Vanessa Delgado.
Abstain, I believe is the.
Yes. Supervisor Janice Rutherford is out. Board member Veronica Padilla-Campos.
Abstain as well.
Mayor Elizabeth Alcantar.
Yes.
Retta Alexander.
Yes.
Can you repeat that, Retta?
I don't know why you can't hear me. Yes. Did you?
Manuel Arredondo. Angie Valderas.
Yes.
Dr. Lawrence Beeson.
Yes.
Susan Bilodeau.
Yes.
Paul Choi. Carrie Doi. Dr. Afif El Hassan.
Yes.
Mary Figueroa.
Yes.
Angela Garcia. Kareem Kongora.
Yes.
Ana Gonzalez.
Yes.
Dr. Monique Hernandez.
Yes.
Dr. Jill Johnston. Humberto Lugo. David McNeil.
Yes.
Daniel Morales. Donald Smith. Rafael Yanis. Okay, so the motion passes with 11 yes.
So
Thank you,
Daphne,
everyone.
Daphne, with 11, is that a quorum?
That's majority of the members present, so it passes.
Okay, thanks. Just want to make sure.
Great. Well, thank you all for the time for this important issue. Thank you, Mayor Alcantar, for taking over that discussion. I don't think we have any other items on the agenda, and our next meeting is April
29th, April 29th.
April 29th.
I just want to ask one point of clarification, that the vote was to sign on the same letter. Okay.
That's
Just
what I
so-
understood, yes.
Okay, just so we're clear. Okay.
All right. Well, we will keep, we'll ask for regular updates on item. Hopefully parents can join us again. But with that, I will let everybody go and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Take
Have a good
care.
weekend,
Have a good
everyone.
weekend.
Yep.
Bye-bye.